I was 34 and working as an astrobiologist in a cramped lab on the edge of a busy city. It had been a dream job for me, analyzing Martian samples. A few months ago, everything changed. It started on a regular day. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, and I was surrounded by rocks and data sheets that cluttered my desk. I thought I was alone. That's when I noticed something strange. One of the rocks had lines etched into it. I leaned closer. They looked like writing, but I thought it was just contamination at first. My hands shook as I realized it might be something significant. The walls began to feel like they were closing in. It was unsettling. My heart raced as dread began to creep in. The following days felt even weirder. I started getting odd messages on my computer from an anonymous source. They were vague but unsettling. They warned me that the markings were dangerous. Each time I read one, chills ran down my spine. I glanced over my shoulder constantly, feeling like something was lurking. My colleagues noticed my anxiety. I could hear them whispering behind my back, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were judging me. Then one night, the power surged in the lab. Equipment shut down randomly. The lights flickered far too much. I could feel panic rising within me as I scrambled to reboot everything. I thought I was losing my mind. The tension made it hard to breathe. Then, one by one, my colleagues began to disappear. They left only cryptic notes that didn't make sense. I began to wonder if they had discovered the truth and were now in danger. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Every day felt heavy. It felt like everything I'd worked for was unraveling. The walls seemed like they were closing in even more. I couldn't shake a growing sense of dread. Finally, I confronted the notes again. They seemed to revolve around a warning. I wanted to ignore them, but I couldn't. I felt drawn to the markings on that rock. Late one night, I saw the markings glow faintly under the harsh lab lights. My heart raced. I knew I had uncovered something buried along with the past of Mars. Then I heard a voice. It was low and creepy. "Are you ready to find out what it really means?" I turned around, but there was nobody there. My breath quickened. Cold sweat trickled down my back. The lab walls seemed to pulse, and I didn't even know if it was day or night anymore. As I stood there, I realized I had opened something I should have left alone, and now I was too deep to turn back. Desperation clawed at me. My hands trembled, and the sense of being watched intensified. I couldn't shake the feeling of being surrounded by something ancient and dangerous. I was terrified, yet I couldn't help but feel I was on the edge of a revelation meant for no one. I just didn't know what would happen next. The next morning, I arrived at the lab, my head spinning with unease. Sleep had evaded me, and every creak of the building echoed like a warning. I took a deep breath before pushing open the heavy lab door. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, leaving shadows lurking in corners. Approaching my workstation, I hesitated. The rock with the markings sat there, ominous yet inviting. I reached out slowly, my fingers brushing against its surface. The lines felt almost alive under my touch, writhing in my mind as if they were trying to convey a message. A chill gripped my spine. Was it just my imagination or something more? I decided to type up everything I had observed, the notes, the markings, even the strange messages. But just as I began, a new email notification popped up. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. The sender was still anonymous, but the content was different this time. "They are watching you. You need to destroy the rock." My breath hitched. Destroy? That felt too drastic, too final. But something in me stirred with urgency. My head swirled with confusion. What had I gotten myself into? A sense of danger wrapped tightly around me. I glanced at the door, half expecting someone to enter, yet the room remained empty. I decided I needed to speak to someone regarding the messages. But who could I trust? Every colleague I once relied on felt compromised. Then I remembered Sarah, my mentor from the early days who had left the project months ago. If anyone would understand, it was her. Her insights into Martian research were invaluable. With my heart racing, I grabbed my phone, hoping she would answer. It rang longer than I expected. I was about to hang up when her voice finally broke through. "Hello?" she said. "Sarah, it's me. I need help." I explained the bizarre situation I found myself in, the warnings, the disappearances. "I'm scared." There was silence on the other end. "You need to get out of that lab, now. There's something deeper at play here. Meet me in the park near the old observatory." I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. She knew something. I agreed and rushed to gather my things. As I packed, my eyes wandered back to the rock.
Something pulled at me, urging me to take it, to prove this madness was real. After a moment's hesitation, I shoved it into my backpack. I left the lab while my heart pounded. The bustling city felt alien, like a distant memory. I made my way to the park, nerves amplifying my pace. Each step felt like a countdown, a race against something I could not grasp. When I finally arrived at the observatory, I spotted Sarah on a bench. She looked pale and worn, the corners of her eyes shadowed. "You shouldn't have brought it with you," she said, nodding to my bag. Confused, I just stared at her. "What do you mean?" Then everything went dark. The world plunged into an unexpected silence. Cold sweat ran down my spine as I realized the ambient sounds were gone. No traffic, no birds, only thick silence. "Sarah," I called, but my voice echoed back like a ghost. Panic set in as I fumbled for my phone, desperately hoping for light.
The screen flashed momentarily before going dead. That's when I saw it, a shadow sliding through the trees. I wasn't alone. My heart raced as I scanned the darkness, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The shadow loomed closer, shifting between the trunks of the barren trees, silent yet unsettling. I tightened my grip on my backpack, acutely aware of the jagged rock nestled inside. "Sarah!" I shouted again, my voice cracking. No response came. The darkness felt oppressive, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I took a step backward, uneasy about what lay behind me in the obscured park. Then, a soft rustling sound reached my ears. My instinct kicked in. I darted to the side, putting the trees between me and the figure moving in the shadows. Fear twisted my stomach. Who or what was out there, and why had everything gone silent? I crouched behind a tree, my breath hitching in my throat, trying to make sense of the situation. My mind flickered back to the warnings, to the ominous emails. A creeping thought slithered into my consciousness. What if I was the target? Suddenly, a burst of light cut through the darkness. I winced, squinting as I saw a beam slicing through the trees. It illuminated Sarah's face, etched with fear, as she raised a flashlight, desperately searching for me. "Over here," I called out softly, crawling closer, half expecting another shadow to ambush me. She spotted me, relief flooding her expression, but that fleeting feeling was dashed when the beam caught something moving behind me. "Run!" she shouted, the urgency in her voice sending a fresh wave of terror through me. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted toward her, adrenaline kicking in as I ducked under branches and dodged the underbrush. We reached each other just as the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from behind, heavy, determined. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know what was chasing us. "Where do we go?" I gasped, scanning our surroundings. The park felt expansive but stifling. Every shadow seemed to hide something dangerous. "We have to find a way out of here." Sarah's expression hardened as she glanced around. "There's an old storage shed near the observatory. It's not safe, but it could give us a moment to think." Without waiting for her response, she darted in that direction. I followed closely, our feet pounding against the gravel path. As we approached the shed, I caught sight of the flickering light behind us again. It moved rapidly, like a predator closing in on its prey. We reached the shed and yanked the door open. Inside was a mess of wood equipment and discarded papers. After a quick scan, we slipped inside and closed the door behind us, leaning against it as we tried to catch our breath. "Did you see it?" I panted, my heart still racing. "What was that?" Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but it didn't feel human. We need to figure out what's going on, and fast." I tore open my backpack, revealing the rock. This could be part of it. There's something about these markings. Before I could explain further, pain erupted in my head, a blinding sensation that pulled me to my knees. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the backpack as flashes of images, ancient Martian landscapes and beings, flashed behind my eyelids. When I opened them again, Sarah was staring at me, horror etched across her face. "What did you see?" she asked, urgency in her voice. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, the shed began to shake. Something was coming, and it wasn't just our past haunting us. I felt a weight in my chest as I realized the truth. The danger was just beginning. The shaking intensified, vibrating through the walls of the shed like a heartbeat. I could feel my pulse quickening again, drowning out the chaos around us. I pressed my back against the door. It felt sturdier than the walls, but I wasn't sure how long it would hold. "Something's coming," Sarah hissed, her eyes darting nervously around the dim interior. I glanced at her, and I could see the same fear mirrored in her expression. We needed to act fast. "Where's that rock?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. I fumbled in my backpack, my fingers trembling as I pulled it out. The strange etchings glowed faintly in the half-light of the shed, and I realized they weren't just shapes. They were words, Martian words. I couldn't be sure. "We have to figure out what this is," I said, holding the rock up to her.
think it might have something to do with whatever's out there." The ground shook again, more violently this time, rattling the old equipment around us. I dropped the rock, a shiver running down my spine as I realized it had more significance than I had thought. "What did you see?" she pressed. "When you were, having a vision." The memory of those landscapes and the sense of another world felt too fresh, too overwhelming. I don't know, it was like ruins, structures that used to stand tall, and then beings. They weren't human, but they had intelligence and power. The details slipped away like water through my fingers, but the dread remained palpable. Sarah shook her head. "This doesn't make sense. Why would any of this matter now?" Before I could assure her I didn't know the answer, the door shuttered again, a heavy thud echoing outside. Then I heard it, a low growl, almost primal, resonating through the space. My breath hitched, and I exchanged a panicked glance with Sarah. "Get ready," I whispered, as I positioned myself at the door, the jagged rock clutched tightly in my hand. Whatever was out there wanted in. With a hard shove, I braced myself against the door. The growling stopped, replaced by the sound of heavy breathing. Whatever it was right on the other side. "Do you think it can smell us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I opened my mouth, but before I could reply, a sudden crash jolted the door off its hinges.
It slammed open, and a monstrous silhouette filled the doorway. My heart stopped. It wasn't just a shadow. It was massive and shadowy, with elongated limbs and a gaping maw filled with too many sharp teeth. As the creature surged forward, I felt a rush of instinct, fight or run. With no time to think, I instinctively threw the rock at it, hoping for the best. That's when I saw it. The markings on the rock began to glow brilliantly as it struck the creature's chest, causing it to pause mid-lunge. What was happening? "Now!" I shouted to Sarah, and we bolted to the opposite side, desperate to find any escape that wasn't blocked by this nightmare. My heart raced, but not just from fear. The thrill of that unexpected power surged through me, igniting something buried deep inside. As we sprinted, disorienting images flooded my mind again. An old battle on Mars, echoes of a conflict that seemed to transcend time. Somehow, we were tied into it, and the creature was here to reclaim what we had inadvertently uncovered. But with the door behind us now shattered, I could feel the real battle was just beginning. The creature hesitated only for a moment, then it lunged after us, its massive limbs pushing through the doorway like branches breaking underfoot. I barely had time to think. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her towards the far wall. The workshop was cluttered, but every piece of junk felt like a lifeline. "Over there!" I yelled, pointing to a window in the far corner. It was small, but I could see daylight filtering through the grime. "We can squeeze through!" We darted across the room, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws as they swiped through the air behind us, smashing a shelf to splinters. The sound echoed around us, mixing with the beast's snarls. I didn't look back, couldn't look back. Sarah reached the window first. She pushed against it, but it refused to budge. Panic bubbled inside me as I turned to see the creature barreling toward us. It was so close now. Its breath smelled of decay, and I could see its jagged teeth glimmering in the dim light. "Come on!" I urged her, throwing my weight against the window. To my surprise, it swung open with a creak, a surge of fresh air washing over us. We clambered through the gap, adrenaline fueling our movements. I landed outside, rolling onto the uneven ground. Sarah followed closely, her eyes wide with fear and determination. We scrambled to our feet and took off into the woods surrounding the shed, branches and underbrush clawing at us as we ran. We didn't stop until we were well away from the shed, panting and glancing over our shoulders. The forest felt too quiet, too empty, as if it was holding its breath. "What was that thing?" Sarah gasped, trying to regain her bearings. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaky, but it felt familiar, like I should have recognized it from my vision. She shook her head, struggling to comprehend. "But why?" Why would this creature come after us? I racked my brain, piecing together fragments of the vision. The ruins, the beings, the conflict. It's tied to the rock. That's why it reacted the way it did. Suddenly, I remembered the etchings. "It mentioned a name," I murmured, unsure if I even believed it. "I think it was Zalkar." Sarah's eyes widened. "What if this Zalkar is that creature?" A loud rustle came from behind us. I froze, heart pounding. "We need to keep moving," I urged. We sprinted deeper into the trees, and that's when I spotted them, glowing symbols carved into the bark of the trees surrounding us. They were identical to the ones on the rock. "Look at these!" I cried, skidding to a halt. I traced my fingers over the symbols, the warmth radiating from them sending tangles through my body.
Maybe they're markers, Sarah suggested, her brow furrowed. But markers for what? Before I could answer, another growl erupted nearby, closer this time, snapping me back to reality. It wasn't over. The creature was tracking us, and somehow we were tied to whatever this ancient conflict was. We need to find shelter, I said urgently. We can't let it catch us again. As we moved further into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth behind what we discovered was closer than we realized. But why did it feel like we were running towards something rather than away? The trees began to thin out ahead, opening up to a clearing. I caught my breath, but as I stepped into the sunlight, a new discovery greeted us. An ancient structure, half buried and covered in the same glowing symbols. Wait, I said, staring at the structure, as the world around us suddenly began to tremble again. The ground shook beneath our feet, the vibrations reverberating in my chest. I grabbed Sarah's arm, my heart racing. What is happening? Is it the creature? She asked, eyes darting around for signs of danger. No, it feels different. It's deeper. I turned my attention back to the ancient structure. The tremors were coming from it. As the tremor subsided, we stepped closer. The ruins loomed over us, an intricate facade of stones covered in symbols that flickered with soft light. I reached out to touch the nearest stone, a strange pull guiding me. The moment my fingertips made contact, a burst of energy shot through me like static, and I pulled back, startled. What was that? Sarah asked, her eyes wide. She felt it too. I don't know, I stammered, but it reacted to me. Brushing aside the dirt on the surface, I revealed more symbols. They seemed to pulse, responding to my presence. These have to mean something, I said, excitement mingling with fear. What if it leads us to the answers? She suggested, glancing nervously toward the forest behind us. The distant growls of the creature still echoed in the air. Or into more trouble, I said, unsure. We didn't have much time. The creature was relentless.
Look, Sarah urged, pointing towards what seemed to be a doorway partially concealed by vines. We can hide in there. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to get trapped inside this crumbling monument, but the thought of being caught outside was worse. Okay, let's do it. We crept into the shadowy entrance, the interior littered with dust and debris. The air was thick, and each footstep whispered against the stone. Inside, the symbols glowed brighter, illuminating the space like fireflies. This feels like a trap, I muttered, glancing around. Are we safe here? We might be, Sarah replied, peering into the darkness ahead. But we can't just sit around. We need information. Deeper in, I spotted something, a stone table covered in shattered fragments. My heart raced as I approached it. These look like... I crouched down, brushing my fingers over the remnants. Pieces of the rock we found. Sarah knelt beside me, her expression tense. So this structure is connected to everything. But how? Before I could answer, a low growl emerged from the entrance. A shadow stretched across the doorway. It's here, I hissed. Sarah's eyes darted around. What do we do? I grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the door. We have to find a way out. Then I saw it. Another set of symbols on the opposite wall, glowing with a fierce intensity. Maybe these can help us. Help us how? She demanded, her fear mounting. I don't know, I yelled, desperation creeping into my voice. But it's our only shot. As we scrambled to the wall, the growl intensified, and I could see the creature slowly edging into the ruined space, its eyes gleaming through the shadows. There was no more room for doubt. We had to act, and we had to act fast. Just trust me, I pleaded, raising my hand to the symbols. Then everything went dark. I couldn't see anything. Darkness wrapped around us like a thick blanket, swallowing sound and light. I felt Sarah's hand slip from mine, panic rising in my chest. Sarah? I murmured, searching for her in the gloom. Are you there? I'm here, she whispered back, her voice shaky. What's happening? I could barely make out my own arm in front of my face. The cold stone beneath my fingers felt oddly comforting as I tried to focus. I remembered the symbols. Maybe they still held some power. I carefully shifted toward where I thought the glowing wall was. Suddenly, a bright burst of light erupted around us. I flinched, shielding my eyes. The symbols illuminated the chamber in a warm glow, dancing like flames. As the light settled, I turned to find Sarah standing beside me, her eyes wide with awe. Did you do that? She asked. I think so, I said, the excitement in my voice barely masking my fear, but we need to figure out what it means. The symbols flickered and shimmered, almost as if they were alive. I took a closer look, scanning each character. They seemed to tell a story, a kind of ancient warning, yet it was all too complex. I felt overwhelmed. Somewhere outside, the creature's growl had faded to a low rumble, the sounds echoing in my mind. We need to hurry. If that thing comes in here... I didn't finish the thought. As we focused on the symbols, one in particular caught my eye. It appeared to be a map, maybe of the area surrounding the ruins. "Sarah, look at this," I pointed. "What is it?" "It looks like it marks something, a location, or—" My voice trailed off as I noticed a series of symbols forming a pathway. "This might lead us somewhere safe, or it could tell us how to stop that creature." "But we don't know if we can trust it," Sarah replied, biting her lip. "I know," I said, frustration bubbling beneath the surface, "but we can't just sit here." The sound of heavy breathing reverberated from the entrance. The creature was lingering outside, waiting. I pushed down my fear. "We have to decide, now." "Okay, let's follow the map," she finally said, steeling herself. "But we stay together." We stepped away from the wall, aiming for the exit. The light from the symbols surrounded us, guiding our steps. I could still hear the low growls, but they felt distant now, almost muffled, as if the structure was protecting us. As we reached the doorway, I paused and glanced back at the glowing symbols. I hope this is the right choice. Just as we emerged, a rush of air hit us, sending a wave of cold dread down my spine. I turned back to see shadows dancing in the entrance. The creature was still lingering, its silhouette more defined now. It was ready to pounce. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand. We dashed into the fading daylight, the forest looming ahead. But then I spotted something glimmering on the ground near the entrance, the fragmented pieces of the stone we had found. "Wait!" I yelled, yanking my hand from Sarah's grasp. "We need to grab the fragments." "Are you crazy? We can't stop now," she shouted, her fear palpable. "Just trust me, we can't leave them behind." But as I bent down to pick one up, I felt a sudden intensity, like a fire igniting within me. The ground rumbled again, and the map symbol lit fiercely in the back of my mind. "Quick, Sarah, we have to hurry!" Before I could pull away, a blinding light surged from the fragments, and the world around us twisted. My heart sank. Something was about to change. The light enveloped us, and I felt a strange pulling sensation, as if I was being yanked in different directions all at once. My stomach churned, and I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping somehow that it would pass quickly. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. I opened my eyes to find myself in a different place entirely. The forest was gone. Instead, I stood on rocky terrain under a vast sky filled with swirling clouds. I could see distant mountains, jagged and gray. The air felt thin, almost electric. Sarah was beside me, blinking in confusion. "What just happened?" she gasped.
I could see her trembling, and it made my own heart race faster. "I don't know," I admitted, looking around, "but I'm pretty sure we're not where we were a moment ago. Look!" Sarah pointed towards what appeared to be massive stone structures in the distance, glimmering faintly against the darkening sky. They resembled ruins, similar to the ones we had just left, but these were larger, towering high above us. "Should we go check it out?" I asked, but as I spoke, an eerie howl echoed all around us. The sound sent shivers down my spine. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, a blend of fury and despair. "Do you think that's the creature?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide, fear creeping into her voice. "I hope not," I replied, scanning the area for any signs of movement. "But I have to keep moving. If we stick around, who knows what else could show up?" We took a cautious step forward, the ground crumbling beneath our feet with each movement. The ruins seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't comprehend. I glanced down at the fragments still clutched in my hand. They felt warm, buzzing with an unknown power, almost like they were alive. "Do you still think these pieces are important?" Sarah asked, gesturing to my hand. "I have to believe that they might guide us somehow," I said, glancing at the ruins again. "Maybe they're connected to all this." As we approached, the ancient symbols etched into the stone structures came into view. They looked familiar, but were far more intricate than those in the chamber. My heart raced as I scanned them, searching for something, anything that would make sense. Then, one of the symbols caught my attention, a spiral entwined with a crescent shape. It felt like a key, unlocking something buried deep within my mind. I reached out to touch it, and suddenly the ground trembled again. The howl returned, louder this time, and I felt it vibrating through my bones. My head spun as I realized shapeless shadows began spilling from the ruins, darting toward us. "Run!" I shouted, the echo of my voice falling flat against the chaos surrounding us. We bolted, the fragments pounding against my palm as I grasped them tighter, desperate for their guidance. From behind us I could hear the sound of heavy footsteps, a brutal force gaining on our heels. Just as we reached the base of a towering structure, I stumbled over something large and hard, a stone slab. Panic surged through me. What if it was too late? What if we didn't escape this time?
That's when I saw it, a glimmer of light reflecting off the stone, illuminating the same spiral symbol I had just touched. It felt like everything was circling back, another thread linking the story I didn't fully grasp. "What is that?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. I met her gaze, feeling a mix of hope and terror. "I think it's our only chance." I lunged towards the illuminated stone, my instincts screaming for me to keep moving.
I could hear the shadows closing in, their whispers growing louder as they gained on us. Fear pulsed through my veins, urging me forward. "Do you think it will help us?" Sarah's voice, shaky but determined, broke through the chaos in my mind. "I have to try," I replied. I knelt beside the slab, brushing away debris with frantic hands. The spiral symbol seemed to glow brighter as I touched it, warmth radiating through my fingers. It offered a strange comfort, as if whispering secrets beneath the surface. "Do it," Sarah urged, glancing over her shoulder. The shadows were no longer indistinct. I could see their glinting eyes staring back at us, filled with a hunger I couldn't understand. I pressed the fragments of the broken relic against the symbol. Light erupted from the contact, spilling outwards like spilled ink. The shadows halted, caught in its glow, their menacing forms hovering just beyond reach. I felt an energy rising, a pulse that echoed with the very rhythm of the earth beneath us. As the light brightened, vivid images flashed in my mind, scenes of fierce battles, dark figures clashing, and strange machines soaring across the sky. This was not just a symbol, it held memories, perhaps even histories of the world that once was. "A doorway," I gasped, piecing it together as the pounding in my chest slowed in wonder. "It's a way to connect with what happened here." "Then we need to open it," Sarah shouted. Just then, a growl erupted from the shadows. It sent chills up my spine. The light flickered, and for a brief moment, I felt the connection wane. Desperation settled in. I couldn't let that happen. I focused harder, pouring every ounce of will into the fragments. The glow intensified, filling the space around us with blinding brilliance. I could feel the shadows recoiling, their eyes reflecting fear for the first time. Suddenly, there was a loud crack, and the stone slab split open. A rift expanded before us, swirling with vibrant energy. Tendrils of light and dark curled against each other, creating a jagged vortex that promised both danger and discovery. "We have to jump," I yelled, the shadows regrouping. Their howls grew into a cacophony of rage. "But where does it lead?" Sarah's eyes were wide, filled with uncertainty. "No time to think. This is our chance." I grabbed her hand, pulling her closer. The vortex pulled us in with a violent tug, and we were swept off our feet. The world around us dissolved into the chaotic blend of light and shadow. I held on to Sarah tightly, hoping with every beat of my heart that we would emerge in safety. And just like that, everything went dark. I came to lying on cool, damp ground. My limbs felt heavy, and I blinked against the bright sunlight filtering through the branches above. Confused, I pushed myself up, scanning my surroundings. I was back in the forest, but not the same forest we had fled earlier. All the shadows and shadows shifting, just trees standing still and unthreatening.
I turned, expecting to find Sarah, but she was nowhere in sight. "Sarah?" I called, my voice echoing among the trees, but silence enveloped me. A pit of worry settled in my stomach, gnawing at me. Where was she? Had we separated? I scrambled to my feet, brushing debris on my clothing. Instinctively, I reached into my pocket, fingers curling around the fragments, the remnants of the rock we had discovered. It felt warmer now. Gritting my teeth, I took a breath and moved forward, hoping to find her. With every step, I recalled the chaos of our escape, the shadows, the howling creature, the pulsing light. I couldn't dismiss how alive the fragments felt in my hand, almost like they resonated with a rhythm that was both ancient and familiar. I pressed on, navigating through the trees, searching for any sign of Sarah or that dark form we had fled, but all I found was an unsettling quiet. The air hummed with unseen energy, and the scent of moss and earth filled my nostrils. Something had changed since we last stood there. I felt a strange electricity in the air, as if the ground beneath me was charged with unspoken energies. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted a figure up ahead, someone standing among the trees, framed against the hazy sunlight. My heart leaped, adrenaline surging. "Sarah!" I shouted, rushing toward her, but as I drew closer, the figure turned, and my heart sank. It was a tall woman, face obscured by a hooded cloak, her posture commanding as she faced me. "Do not come any closer," she warned, raising a hand. Her voice was steady, yet chilling. "You should not be here. The veil between worlds is thin, and you walk a dangerous path." "A path?" I repeated, bewildered. "I just want to find my friend." She narrowed her eyes.
You think you can return to normalcy after touching the relic? The darkness follows you now, whether you accept this truth or not. The relic. I felt my pulse quicken. What do you know about it? And do you know where Sarah is? The woman hesitated. Your friend is safe, for now. The weight of her tone settled over me like a heavy blanket. But the creature you faced is only the beginning. You must choose how to wield what you've uncovered. It is a burden, not a gift. A wave of dread washed over me, tugging at the corners of my mind as the memories of that monstrous form, Salgar, swept through me. What do you mean? If you wish to protect her, you must understand why the markings call to you and how they bind you to this place. Bind, I murmured, my breath catching. Suddenly, images flashed again. A vast Martian landscape, beings who wielded power, a civilization that had fallen, echoing the dark history of conflict that was not just a tale, but a reality. The relic awakens dormant ties to this land, the forces that slumbered long ago. She continued, you are a part of the ancient story, whether you like it or not. Then how do I stop this? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice.
Follow the echoes, she replied cryptically. But beware, the choices you make will ripple across the fabric of reality. Drifting between confusion and determination, I took a step back. Why should I trust you? The woman lowered her hood, revealing striking features and otherworldly beauty marked by lines that glowed faintly, symbols etched into her skin. Remember that against the darkness you will gather allies, but you must decide whether to confront the shadows or let them consume you. Please, I said, pleading, show me where my friend is. As if sensing my urgency, the woman nodded. A pathway opened before me, illuminated by the same glow I'd seen before. The essence of your friend leads that way, but be careful, there are forces that watch. Taking a deep breath, I hesitated. Behind me loomed the reality of everything that had happened, of incomprehensible power and the presence of the unfathomable creature. I knew I had to act for Sarah's sake. I had faced the dark once. I could do it again. Thank you, I said, stepping onto the path. The woman's gaze sharpened. Walk the line with caution. The choices you make will shape the balance of light and dark. It is only through understanding that you can uncover your truth. With those final words echoing in my mind, I pressed forward through the trees, every step filled with uncertainty, but also a newfound sense of purpose. As I ventured into the murk, I realized I'd never return to the life I once knew, and I wasn't sure what awaited me, but one thing remained true. Sarah needed me, and I wouldn't stop until I found her.